welcome to another episode of your Best Therapist podcast. And today, I am so happy to have back your bestie and mine from Besties by Caitlin. Please welcome back Caitlin Marshall to the show. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Anytime you ask, I come running, girl.
I love you so much. I love everything that you're doing. For those who don't know, I mean, if you know who I am and not Caitlin, I don't know what to tell you because Caitlin you are the queen of TikTok. You are all over the place. You've been at TikTok Awards. You're breaking news. You're in Us Weekly. Sincerely, you're just one of my favorite humans on the planet.
You too.
Oh, well, thank you. Also, your content is just so good. And so the main reason Caitlin is here today, well, there's a couple of them, is that you recently went to the TikTok Awards.
I did.
And can you tell us all a little bit about what the heck that was like?
Yes. Listen, I have a background in acting, so I've done maybe just a few red carpets before, but this was, a totally different experience. It was really interesting to get to see fellow content creators, but also the content creators that are constantly on your For You page and things like that really get their flowers for all the hard work they've put in. People think that a lot of times those of us who are making content, whether it be talking head videos, whether it be any other type, it does take a considerable amount of effort. And, getting to see them really feel like they are important because we're consuming their content all the time.
Yeah.
I have to say the best part for me was when Sierra performed. My millennial heart. I mean, you could tell around us, my friend Jordy Cray, he and I were sitting next to each other, and you could tell around us who were the Gen Zers and those of us who were millennials, because he and I, every word, okay, that was high school for us. Hello, 1-2 step. We were rocking it out I sound so old saying it that way, but we did not have a care in the world. So that was a lot of fun. And just really seeing the creators that you are connecting with online all the time, but you don't get to see them in person, and you feel like you're friends with them, even if you haven't gotten to meet them in person, or you only get to see them at certain events. It was really fun to just dress up. I mean, hello, H&R Block Suite. They really hooked it up. They had glam there. Of course, I had my own glam.
Girl,
shout out to Jure for the slay. I can't take full credit.
Shout out your glam team, because whoever does
Yes.
you, first of all, are just gorgeous, number one, but number two, you're always on point. Like, let me tell you. So today I was like, okay, let me step up my game a little bit. I'm going to put on like a little bit of makeup. And I show up and I'm like, I feel like I look like an ugly turtle. And you're just like, the wind is flowing in your hair. You're just like so gorgeous. I love it, Caitlin. I just love it.
Well, I love your natural beauty, number one. I really pigeonholed myself because I felt being a mom when I started all of this I think I started it when my son was 18 months old or so. And let me tell you, it was, and it still is very much this way throughout the day. I am wearing Old Navy. I am wearing Target. I am not in any type of, like designer type of thing. But my one place that I could just feel feminine was doing my makeup and doing my hair. And I used to be a hairstylist, so I feel like I have an unfair advantage. But
you do. I'm so jealous.
I do.
Those wrists are on point, honey.
Listen,
try to blow my hair out, and I'm like, I don't have the wrist for this.
I'll tell you. I did not want to spend the money on a Dyson, but the Shark Flex system is a great alternative. It's still pricey in my opinion, but that's the way I did my hair today. It is a lifesaver. You can be like holding with your left hand and then doing your makeup or whatever with your right. I multitask. I just really started glamming it up because it was the only place I got to feel like an adult woman. And then it was like, great, now people expect me to not look like, a trash panda, when I hop on screen. And now I'm like, great.
Listen, what I admire about that is that there are certain women who they love like makeup and hair and stuff. I'm the opposite of that type of lady. I am like tomboy, no makeup, hair dries naturally. Either way, guess what? We're all beautiful. It doesn't matter. Do whatever makes your heart happy. I'm missing that gene. I'm missing that like girly gene.
There is nothing wrong with that. If my hair dried naturally the way there's no way I would never be putting heat on it. I have this insanely wavy, curly hair that if I don't do something, it's like it is a just poodle brushed out. But we can't have it all, can we?
No, we can't. That's right. Listen, we can have brains and beauty and all this stuff, but we're all just doing our best, folks. That's the message of this. So
we sure are.
We sure are. It just first of all, I love Ciara, and it's so funny because I was born in 81, right? I'm older than you, but the other day I heard 1 2 Step, and I wish I could remember anything the way that I remember a lyric from the 90s. Anything. Like my husband will be like, "What's our anniversary?" I'm like, "I don't know. Let me tell you 1 2 Step." It's a problem. Exactly. It's a real problem.
Exactly. Listen, if it's Hanson, if it's Backstreet Boys, I know those words. If it's Britney, Ciara, or the odd rap song from the early 2000s that if my mother knew at that time I was listening to some of this, she would have just had an absolute coronary. Absolutely remember all those words. But do I remember what I walked in the room for? No, of course not.
Well, so hopefully this normalizes for everybody that's, going through aging, middle life, all of that beautiful stuff.
Yes.
So other than all that from the TikTok awards, it must have been so interesting to, like you said, have these relationships that they're not exactly parasocial. Like they're,
right.
Tell me a little bit about that. That's what I'm really curious about.
Some of the people there I had known through the Bravoverse, being at BravoCon and things like that. But, what I was finding interesting, I'd be talking with someone and they'd be like, "Oh, let's follow each other." And I would look down and they'd have 1 million followers and I'd be like, okay. And I think what the main thing there, and it's something that one of my best friends who's a first grade teacher, Lindsay, she lives here in Colorado as well. And she had said one day that followers and numbers like that, they're monopoly money. And something about that resonated, and I've even said that to you too, that it resonated so much with me because everyone is just this person who is sitting in their home, or even if they're going out in public to film these things, and just because they have hundreds of thousands of followers, it's still a person at the end of the day. And, the numbers, you don't have them tattooed to your forehead in public. So people don't know unless you're one of those types that's like, "Do you know who I am?" Which, please God, no. But
no.
Right, exactly. But it's really interesting. And you could see the difference with some people, how it would make them feel good about themselves to see their number compared to someone else's, or the opposite. I really, ever since my friend Lindsay was like, "It's monopoly money," I went, it's never fazed me at this point. And I think that's a message I would like to give to a lot of people, even if they just want to start out doing content creation. It is monopoly money. It matters only in that world, nowhere else. And I love that idea.
Literally. And here's the thing. I am the representation of someone who is just no one in real life. Like literally nobody. And then I open my phone and I don't even have that many followers. I think I have 16,000 or something, which it really isn't that many in the scheme of things. But what I psychologically think to myself all the time is I'm sitting here talking to you, right? And then I open my phone and I have this community, these people that are in my comments and all of this stuff, but it's that's not real. It's like crypto. It's what does that even mean? Because then I close my phone and I'm in my pajamas and I'm with my husband and I'm whatever. So I think it's just like anything else. The psychology of how we manage success and social media followings and how it impacts our mental health and attitude. I just think it says a lot about us, but I couldn't even blame people for kind of buying their own bag of bullshit, right? When everyone's saying "You're so great, you're so great." So that must be a hard line to walk, I imagine.
I'll tell you why it's not, because a lot of the times if I'm like, "Oh my gosh, look who just reposted me or who liked my comment," 2 seconds later, my son will be done pooping and be on all fours waiting for me to wipe his butt. And I'll tell you what, every single person in my family would never allow me to get a big head because, I mean, even the extended family, they're like, yeah, so you're going to the TikTok awards? Cool.
They keep you real humble.
Oh, yes. That's like, that's the thing is, are they proud of me? Yeah. Do they love seeing the wins? Yeah. But they're also like, okay, so anyway, like they just,
Right.
it depends on who you surround yourself with. And, it's also the fellow content creators that you interact with, like you and I. It doesn't, because you say, oh, well, I only have 16,000, but do you think of how many people who have 100 and are dying to have 16,000? And you can add that number up higher and higher and higher to infinity and beyond. And there's always going to be someone who's thinking, I want that to be me within the next year. And they're working hard just to get to the 5,000. So, it's, and people, I think sometimes I also don't totally love using the word followers because I'm like, I don't have, little ducklings following me around
We're
saying
not cult leaders. We're
Right,
humans who
exactly.
interact with these humans. Right.
Yes, exactly. It's about if you're putting things out there that truly are informative or helpful or educational or entertaining, that's what you're actually doing a service for these people and then they're consuming it. So
Right.
we are in service of the people who follow our accounts at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's true. And I love your reframe of it too, because I think the most problematic part of the whole thing is just like, for me, I'll say this, is you got to be careful not to keep up with the Joneses in terms of like comparison can be the thief of joy. I really do believe that.
Truly.
And when we overfocus on like, I know for me that when I overfocus on numbers or analytics, it's just that road lies madness for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Everyone.
Right, yes. Well, I always try to keep it to me because I'm like, I don't want to tell people their business, but I mean, for sure.
Even for me, once I started getting a few little invites to this and that, then I see these people are at the Golden Globes Spotify, and there will be a little twinge in my stomach. And I go, wait, Caitlin, that means it wasn't meant for you right now. And it doesn't, just because it's not right now, doesn't mean it's not next year. And I think, because I will say this, every year in January, I create a vision board. And last year, I will scream this from the rooftops. I really focused on very specific things, and I had manifested on there. It's almost embarrassing. I'll never show anyone else my vision board, but it's personal. But I put on there because we knew BravoCon was coming. BravoCon 2025 free as a creator. They had never invited creators before, and I got invited as one of their creators to go. And there were certain things like I wanted to do more. Get to go to more events. And I had that on my vision board. And then TikTok awards came. And, I really believe in the idea that, and this also went back to when I was doing acting, because listen, I have cried in my car over a callback that went so terribly for a kitty litter commercial. When I tell you I have been at those moments, and I remember I finally looked up in my rearview mirror and I went, you dumb bitch. It's a kitty litter commercial. And so, listen.
There's no crying in kitty litter.
No, it clumps anyway. At least it should. But, I've been on all the spectrums of things. And I think when you can stay focused on the things that you truly want, and maybe that you didn't even know you wanted, okay, so then I know I want this next year. And I really encourage that, and not toxic positivity, because it's okay to have disappointment, but to really, okay, I'm disappointed, but here's how I'm going to reframe it. And that's something that I think really is a big indicator of how you're going to end up becoming successful, because I firmly believe successful people only got to be successful by reframing the disappointments so that they could keep going.
Oh, for sure. And so the one thing I can say is like being a therapist, helping people, helping myself, going through my own healing process is that I believe we learn as much, if not more, from the losses than we do from the wins. And it's not about how many times you fall down. It's picking yourself back up. I think that resilience and ability to kind of bounce back from those challenges, for me anyway, has been the key to my success. And so I love what you're talking about in terms of like manifesting and the vision board. I've never tried that, but this is the second time we've talked about that. And I feel like I'm letting that rattle around in my brain because I just love the idea. But either way, I think that you're one of those people who I'm always so happy for you because you're such a good person. You deserve the successes that you get. You work so hard. And I'll always tell this story. This is an old story, but I just cannot get a hold of TikTok and I don't feel like learning. It's like I'm getting in my own way. And the one day I was like, Caitlin, can you show me, like screen record? And you did about 75,000 steps in about 2.5 milliseconds. I was like, I was like Shannon Bedore. I was like, I can't do this.
Well, let me tell you, it took a while to get there. And, it's funny, if you look at my old content, it moved slowly. Was some of it, like the content interesting? Yes, but I didn't move things quickly enough and I didn't know where to cut. And so it is a learning curve. Even when they used my content on the Mary Cosby documentary, and I was like, I don't even remember what I said in this. I went back and looked and I was like, oh my God, I posted that because it was 2 years ago. And I was like, wow. And so
let's get into that,
it's
Caitlin.
growing.
Let's get into it because I covered the Mary Cosby doc, and when I was watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, my girl Caitlin is all over this damn thing, y'all. First of all, and I have to tell you, is that we are all our own harshest critics because when I watched it, I thought you were recounting what happened. You were telling the story. It looked wonderful to me. It looked like all your other content, but of course to you, you're like cringing. You're like, oh God, what was this? But then we texted and you were like, they didn't ask my consent. And I was like, what? And then I was like, oh my gosh, you have to come on the show and talk about this. So tell us a little bit, what the hell happened?
So this is what happened, and it actually starts at the TikTok Awards. I'm not going to name the person because I know they had to sign NDAs. This person that I'm friends with said, babe, I ran into them and they were like, I was at, the screening for it. You are in a lot of it, of this Mary Cosby documentary that TLC did. And I said, what?
Yeah, like a lot.
What do you mean?
A lot.
Yes, because I have to say, and I'll clarify my reasons for why I would not have wanted to be involved. And it's not because I'm afraid of Mary or afraid that Bravo would be angry with me. I don't work, they don't pay me. So it's like, it's, if you want to, Bravo, feel free. But I remember when I saw the previews for it, I specifically thought in my head, wow, that's going to be interesting. I'm glad I'm not involved in this documentary. I don't know why I thought that. What a weird thought to have, right? I also am a little, I think I have some witchy poo psychic abilities or something because this type of thing happens to me a lot. And when this friend told me that at the TikTok Awards, I wasn't happy. I'll be honest, because also I had received an email from the production company earlier in the day where they had said, and mind you, this was the TikTok Awards, I think they were December 16th, 18th, something like that. And the doc came out January 1st. Mm-hmm. So they had actually emailed me that day asking if I would like to receive screeners and talk about it on social media. I'll be completely upfront about this. I said, okay, that's interesting because number one, if I'm going to talk about something that's extremely controversial like that, and I give my own truthful take, I said, okay, so what's the budget, for me posting? Yeah. There was none. But then later that night, I found out I was in it. So here's where my issue is my anxiety monster was like, I need to know, I need to see it. Get the screeners. I need to see it. Fine. So I'm like, okay, I'll agree. Sign the NDA and sure, I'll post about it. Well, it took them forever to send me the first screener. And then I had to wait a couple days for the second two. I only got to watch the full thing. Let's see. It was at night and I was wrapping up presents Christmas Eve. So when I say it was way late in the game, not once was it mentioned that I was in it. And watching it after the first one, and this is just me being completely honest, after I watched the first episode and I went, oh my gosh, this is going to be bad for Mary. And then we get, to the second and the third, and it to me felt more pointed at Robert because for me, if you're going to, number one, go on national television and make specific allegations. From the type of content I make and the type of ramifications you see of not having proof and having solid evidence, accusing her of sleeping with someone who, unfortunately, that man Cameron, he can't defend himself or provide any proof if there is any now, as he's passed. So I felt that it was almost personally unfair to even bring that up, mostly for his sake and his family's sake. There were so many moments that it was kind of going, this feels like gossip. And I can tell these people are in pain, most specifically, you know, the men speaking on Robert Sr. Just, I think part of it is too, is when I did that deep dive on Mary and her grandmother, Rosemary Mama Cosby, I found the story fascinating. And it wasn't even like I was trying to dig up this big expose. It was, I used to do a lot of deep dives.
Yeah, you were literally like recounting. You were like, this is what's reported, that's your job, right? That's part of what it is that you do. You weren't even having a ton of opinions. It was just like, this is the story.
Because it's an interesting story. I found it fascinating and inspiring that Mama, her grandmother, walked all the way to Salt Lake City with her children, and that she started all these businesses as a Black woman during that time in history in such a predominantly white area. I just found it fascinating.
Then 1% of people of color. And this woman came in, and that was one of the things that bowled me over. I was like, this woman was a trailblazer. She came in, she set up services, communities, things for people of color, which was a completely untapped resource. Because I don't know why Salt Lake pretends that people of color or gay people don't exist, but that's a whole other issue. Anyway.
Right, yes. Well, you know, and this is what I think is most unfortunate, is that, again, you know, you can tell these people, there is pain there, right, that are speaking on this. But because this production company not only inflated YouTube subscriber numbers on, for example, Jenny Blaze's video that they put on there from her YouTube channel, that she also didn't consent to it. So that was making it appear as though they made it look like she had 400 something thousand followers and she has like 4,000. The fact that they did not ask, it seems to be any of the content creators that were not talking heads on this, it then discredits the research they did. They used my own research to fuel this without taking the proper channels. And so then these people, it undermines a lot of the things they have to say, in my opinion. And I know I'm not the only content creator to bring this up, because they also are the people who did the Armie Hammer documentary. And I know they went about that in the proper way, is the thing. So why do that? Because I don't want, in my opinion, something that is supposed to be this heavy and serious. I don't think we should be putting content creators chit-chatting about it throughout the entire thing.
I fully am blown away by what you're saying, because I didn't even think of it like that. And I have to say that makes so much sense to me, number one. And number two, the thing that you and I had texted about, which for me as a therapist is paramount in anything that you're doing, is consent. And I think the lack of consent here, and I'm not being dramatic using that word,
no,
it is a consent issue with, like you said, you and Jenny and all these other content creators. Yes, you're putting your content out there. Yes, I understand people will say, some of your followers did say, well, you put this out there. But consent is still important. It's still important to do things the proper way when it comes to TV shows and NDAs and signing contracts. And if they're going to be using your labor, and
my face and my voice.
Correct. Labor, face, voice, everything. And to not get permission, to not get consent, to use that to fuel part of this documentary that you didn't even realize what was going on. I understand how it all creates to make it feel very icky, I would imagine.
It does. And, you know, it is hard because from my standpoint, I pretty much, you know, and I know a lot of the general public doesn't know the full story and that they don't know a lot of these things, but I was it was kind of frustrating that really there wasn't anything that one hasn't already been addressed. So if these things that these people are alleging happened, there wasn't any information given or proof provided. And personally, again, if you're attacking someone's character to that extent on national television and saying this happened, I need some more evidence, at least from the time of all of these people being adults, I should say. Because no one's going to have proof from their childhood. That's insane, at this point. But, and it's hard because I do understand I won't say we all, a lot of us have grown to really like Mary. And I'll tell you, my biggest turning point with her was that very loving conversation she had with her son, Robert Jr., about his addiction struggles. The verbiage she used, it was not the Mary that we thought we knew. And something about that, it was that conversation. It wasn't how funny and quirky she can be that won me over with her. It was seeing how she handled such a painful, emotional, heartbreaking, and delicate situation with her own child that really, I viewed her in a different light. And it was something she specifically, it was a thing she said where she said, I don't want to get it. I support you and love you while I won't support this part of it, but I will support every other part of you, which means I will support you getting your help through it. And that's where really I just looked at her through a completely different lens after that. And has she said some really awful things? Yes, I'm not even going to deny that. But I more so viewed Robert Sr. in a different light after the documentary than I did Mary. And it's unfortunate that this production company couldn't do the bare minimum to ask us if we wanted to be a part of it, because to me, that completely invalidates a lot of the research they did. Because
and I understand. And listen, I understand now why you feel that way, because initially you and I had some differences of opinion on this, which I love differences of opinion because that's what makes the world go round. I was anti-Mary initially because of this whole thing. And then I came around exactly the moment that you just said. When being an addictions counselor, working in inpatient rehab, seeing people who are ravaged by this terrible disease of addiction, it gives you such a awareness, a gratitude for how hard it is for family members to navigate this. So it tugged on my heartstrings. But I'm going to be honest, I felt like a fool because when I watched the docuseries, I was like, wait a second. This woman was allowed to have sleight of hand in a way, because all the issues with the docuseries, like those I think are very valid. And I hear now what you're saying, because now even I question that. I'm like, well, if you can't even get this right with content creators and you're going to use them and not get consent, that does taint like the documentary for me a little bit, I will say. But then I almost feel like now looking back, I want to get your thoughts on this, is that Mary was able to, Jen Shaw was like, hold my beer because I'm going to defraud every elderly person this side of the Mississippi. And then we all just were collectively distracted, myself included.
True.
And then I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, like none of this has been resolved. These accusations are still out there. And I think for me, the most damning piece of evidence or information was the fact that Cameron's voice, like we heard his voice, we heard him say things, and his family members, I would assume, but now I will question this too, is that they consented to tell his story. But you can't really consent, right, when you're deceased.
So
that
hard.
Does present some tricky points of view for sure. It's like you want to honor him, you want to honor his experience, and then you also want to honor just like reality and all of that. So it's a very tricky situation. I'll give you that.
It is, and it does sound like, and again, we can only take the family member's word for it at this point. It does sound like he was saying he wanted to get his version of things out there. And, there is that aspect. And we know Lisa Barlow was trying to do that with him and whatnot. So, I don't want to completely take away from that either. Part of it as well is I grew up very strong Christian household and, knowing all the different types of denominations and whatnot. And, the Pentecostal church, or any church really for that matter, you can find ways that it is a cult in anything with that, with
Sure. Organized religion, period, depending on who's the leader, what's the system like, what's the group dynamic like. Certainly organized religion can be a setup for cult-like behavior for
exactly.
sure. Yes. Growing up Catholic,
that's hard too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that can be hard too, where it's, there are those aspects. But again, to be completely transparent, we got a lot more insight into Robert Sr., in my opinion. And
I agree with that. How the predatory, which I'm going to say that. You're not saying that. I'm going to say predatory behaviors. And that's what concerns me, though, is knowing, and for me, part of going back to Mary with her son, I felt a little bit like a fool, because I wonder how much of it was like, look over here, look over here, look over here, right? I'm going to use this piece for a storyline because then I don't have to talk about my husband, and I don't have to talk about the church, or I don't have to do these things. And that's just maybe cynical. Being a therapist, you see people weaponize really vulnerable things all the time.
Sure.
And unfortunately, sometimes that just happens. I'm not saying that's what Mary did. It seemed very genuine. But I think for me, it was like, well, what is real? What is not? But either way, I worry about Mary. I worry about Robert Jr. I worry about people. I just worry about the people. I think that's at the end of the day is like, I don't want to be supporting someone publicly that is creating generational trauma for other folks. That's something I have a really hard time with, which I know you do.
Absolutely. Too. Yeah, absolutely. I wish they had just gone about things in a different way. I don't know that involving her sister was helpful, in my opinion. There were some odd remarks she had made that it was like, it felt it was hurting the cause, even when she had very specific things that would have been a good contribution. Because I watched it with he's my husband, ex-husband, but husband, whatever we'll call him. And he has no idea any of it. And yeah, even though I signed the NDA, he was there watching it with me. And it was interesting. I always find it interesting when someone who is not immersed in it, because he has no opinions, right? And he did say at one point, this woman sounds very jealous of her sister. And I was like, really? Because I found this remark about buying her the BMW. Well, you've got 25 other grandchildren. I'm right here. And I'm like, you guys should have taken that out. You know what I'm saying? They just did.
Yeah. It's a good example.
Such a disservice to so many of these people who are sharing their version of their life story within this. And it's unfortunate the disservice they did to those people.
I agree, because when you have survivors who you can see the pain in their faces that are telling their story, you need to make sure you dot the I's, cross the T's, so that they're not the ones who are being questioned. Because when we get into questioning survivors, yes, that is the problem. I totally get it. I think it's always valuable, like when my husband, I'll be watching something and he's like, these women are intolerable. And I'm like,
I know, but I love it. And it's so relaxing to watch.
He's like, Melissa, you're so smart. What are you doing here? And I'm like, but this is fascinating.
This is what smart people watch.
Yes. No, but some of it, he'll be like, yeah, I could see like why you're into this. And some of it, he's like, this is pure trash. But the point of it being, I do think like those observations that you noted, that he noted, I think are very valid. And at the end of the day, this is about survivors and telling stories, people who survive religious trauma and abuse and all these things. So I wish, for your sake, for their sake, for everyone's sake, it could have been done differently. But this is kind of one of those pitfalls, I guess, would you say, of content creation and being in this space.
Yeah.
But how does that impact you psychologically, I guess, is what I'm wondering. Because I know you've been very vocal about, your anxiety. How does that impact you?
Well, here's the thing, is the anxiety it gave me as someone who I make my own content willingly, especially now that I'm farther down the road, because I've made content where it was like bull in a china shop being negative. And I, had a turnaround where I went, no, if everyone's a human being, you need to stop. Don't be the clickbait person. And so I changed that because I am a firm believer in allowing people to change their mind. And that is something a lot of the social media society does not like to allow. But
Bingo.
I will allow it. So, that's it at the end of the day. It was just, I did not want to be involved because also I don't think anything I could have contributed would have been helpful. It wouldn't have been really pertinent to the story when they could have done their own research. And my mental health surrounding it was stressed. I was very stressed out because we all know how any editing can be done to make it look as though you're saying one thing when you're saying another. And I didn't know what they were going to cut up, something I had made 2 years ago, when I just didn't know what I was doing. And I just did not want to be involved because I wasn't interested in being a part of a takedown and a part of someone's story that is much more heavy than the type of content I was making and do make. I don't think content creators should have been involved in it to the extent that we were. And it still gives me a little bit of anxiety and stress.
Well, sure. And I think that, to your point, we're not talking about, nonsense. We're talking about people's livelihoods, religious trauma, generational trauma, people who lost their lives under really concerning circumstances. So I hear what you're saying. I certainly have a new perspective on it. And I want to say that I hope that it'll be done better in the future, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I can't imagine that that is going to be the case.
Let me say this. Just because this one production company flopped, it doesn't mean that. Now let me also say this. I've seen a lot of people say it was not the flop, so I don't want to try and diminish anything from it, and I don't want the wrong message from my end to be taken away. I think anything they put in there now, because they pushed me into it without my consent, it's hard to look at it in the light that as a viewer of it, that most people are looking at it as. So I want to be clear about that. And I'm not just absolving Mary of everything. And it's hard when, like I said, she has just become a different person in my mind. And then this. But, I think moving forward, it's not the way it's supposed to be done. I'm hearing that we're going to see this a lot more often. Hulu has never once gone about it in the way that they did. They have whenever they use my content on Secret Lives, they always reach out, ensure I sign, a document for each and every video that they are intending to use. They let me know which video they're intending to use, all of that. So I've never experienced that specifically. And I know a lot of people will go, oh, well, all publicity is good publicity. I don't agree because I don't think I should have been a part of their stories.
And here's the thing.
I didn't want to be.
I'm going to put a pin in that and say, for the people who are saying that, how might you feel if something that you said went viral and then they used it without your consent? I think that one of the things I love most about you is that you're not afraid to say, okay, I had this different style, but I realize people are human. And so now I'm just trying to have humanity, which to me is the greatest thing that you could do for yourself in the world. Right. And when and I think that's why we like each other so much too, because it's like, these people aren't characters, they're human beings. And so when we're talking about them, I think we have to be mindful that they're humans, that they're imperfect. And so I love and appreciate your perspective on that. And I think that I think the world would be a better place if everyone for 1 second would be like, how might I feel in that situation? AKA.
You mean empathy?
Empathy, right. How might I feel if I said one thing on an Instagram and then someone put it into a doc and then I see myself on TV? Most people would perish. They would not survive that. So I think you deserve a little bit more credit. And I'm glad that you were able to tell your story to have people understand that for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
So let's move on to, we wanted to talk about the whole Viall Files, Austen Kroll interview.
Yeah.
And, I pointedly made this pivot as as abrupt as I possibly could to talk a little bit about this next story. The way that I heard about the story was from you. Can you give people a synopsis of what happened?
So I saw Austen Kroll was going to go on the Viall Files. And, sometimes I find their interviews interesting and I just, whatever. I've never been one of those people that I cannot stand Nick and Natalie. There are lots of people like that. You got to do something really bad for me to be like, I cannot stand them. Okay. And so I'm watching for a minute and we are not 10 minutes into this episode. And it's very clear that they had not been into it more than 10 minutes when Natalie very abruptly brings up, and it's completely out of nowhere. They were talking about how Austen got cast on Southern Charm, and it was such a bull in the china shop way that she just says, so, Austen, what I didn't know about you, and here's trigger warning.
Thank you.
That your older sister died when she was only 9 years old. And you just see Austen go. He literally says, hey, I guess we are changing gears. And she's like, sorry, you don't have to answer, but how old were you? He's like 7 years old. He was 7 years old.
I want to stop you there because that moment of you don't have to answer, but right? That's not so again, when we're going to talk about consent here, I think that consent isn't just someone's fine with this question. Enthusiastic consent is how does someone react when I'm talking to them about this? What is their body language? Does this seem like something that they're interested in discussing? Because not everyone has the ability to say, hold on, I don't want to talk about this or whatever, because especially like we just talked about in the public eye, Austen may have felt, well, if I say something or I stop this here, I'm going to be an asshole. Or people are right. Like we never know how people are going to perceive it. So that, not to interrupt you, but that was one thing I really wanted to point out as you were saying it. Please continue.
No, I think that is the very important point here, because if you see his body language, his foot just suddenly is going 90 miles an hour.
Yep.
He's, I love to look at body language specifically, especially when someone, depending on what the specific situation is, but you notice his lips thin out, and people usually do that when they're trying not to say something, or they're, sometimes people will do that when they're trying not to lie, but sometimes people will do that when they're like, great. And it's that he pulled his lips in and everything else up top slowed down in his body and everything on the lower half was just jiggling. And, it was this whole conversation happened again within 10 minutes. And the only portion of this podcast, I'm not going to lie, I stopped listening after the next part where if you don't know the story behind what happened, which he has talked about it on the show, if you haven't seen that episode.
Times. He couldn't have talked about this more. Because that was the other thing. I'm like, how lazy of an interviewer do you have to be to have no awareness of a key component of this man's story?
I mean, the thing is, too, when Austen has opened up on the show, on Southern Charm, he was in an environment with people, like, for example, his producer who's asking him questions in confessional. He has a rapport and an actual relationship with them. And they most likely did not sit him down, go, okay, Mike's good. How was your day? So anyway, tell us about. And that's what she did. Austen was present at 7 years old when his 9-year-old older sister, Kyle, and his parents, the whole family unit, were on a hike in a town that he didn't want to mention, so I won't even say the town. And very tragically, his sister slipped from a ledge in this railing that it sounds like was not properly placed for safety, and she passed. I want this to be something that is very clear, especially after seeing so many people commenting on the video I had made on this. Sibling loss, it is painful, and it is treated, I'm seeing a resounding comment is that people, strangers to these people, will not treat it as though it is the painful thing that it is. Bearing in mind,
1,000%.
Austen's parents experienced the most horrific, painful thing any parent can go through. Austen not only lost the third person in his life who was the most consistent figure as a very young child, but then was witness to his parents experiencing the most painful thing. And just like you and I were chatting about last night or the night before, it's like children tend to find a way to blame themselves for things because developmentally egocentric, right?
Yep.
And so that sweet little 7-year-old brain was going, am I going to be enough now that Kyle's gone? And he has made it very clear that what brought their family out of what he referred to as those dark times was the birth of his younger sister, Katie. And so there is something more to read into that as well, that maybe he was feeling that I'm not enough until Katie came along and our family felt complete again. And he's not said it that way. I love the way he speaks about his sister, Katie. He just adores her. And honestly, I have to say it's the most endearing thing about Austen, in my opinion.
Full agree.
Mm-hmm. It was the way Natalie then asked, well, what was this cliff?
Okay, I'm going to stop you here, Caitlin. When I heard that question, I thought to myself, you're either a robot or just not good at this. Because in what universe is that the question? And now here's the other thing. Understanding that sometimes people are human, right? And as a therapist, one of the biggest parts of doing your job properly is being a trained assessor, meaning when people are telling you things, when these grief bombs, when these tragedies are coming through their mouth, even as a therapist who it's my job to assess, it's our job to handle that with care and comfort and safety and not a machete. And to ask the question about the cliff, I just thought it was a moment where, people came to my Instagram and they said, cancel them. And I said, listen, I'm not a believer in canceling people. I think all humans have opportunities for learning and growth. And I hope for them this is one. And if it's not, then I will certainly be mindful of where I put my time in the future, and it won't be with them, right? But
yes,
I hope that this could be a learning lesson. But for me, I haven't heard a public apology. I haven't heard a peep about this.
I've been looking too. I've been looking too because I'm hoping that it's coming. But, this isn't the only time they've said things on there and I don't know if it's just more recently that I've noticed it, but the way they spoke about Whitney Leavitt doing Broadway and something, because there was a time when if I didn't have anything else to listen to at the gym, because I like podcasts when I'm lifting weights, I would sometimes pop on their podcast, and they talked about Kristen Doty seeking advice when she was pregnant. Should I do a night nurse when her daughter was born? And the advice they gave was very, in my opinion, damaging for a new mom. If she's seeking your advice, give her the reasons that you didn't want to do it, but make sure you say, do what's right for you as you are in the full throes of trying to recover, trying to keep a human alive and cared for and loved when it's one of the hardest times in your life as an actual human being, physically, emotionally, mentally. Because I'll tell you what, as someone who, I went through PPD, PPA, I had the PPOCD, truly, and the lack of sleep. There were days I thought I was going to die. And it was, and I don't know how else to put it. Would I still do it all over again for my child? I would go through it again. Absolutely.
And that's motherhood, by the way. That's motherhood. And that's why it deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, absolutely zero judgment, and nothing but love and compassion for that reason, because we're talking about people who are trying to keep their child alive and themselves and their relationships and be a human in the world. Can you imagine a harder task?
Let me tell you, for someone like me, if I could have afforded a night nurse, I think I would have had a greater experience with my first child before he was sleeping through the night. It was so hard to enjoy this precious thing I had worked so hard to grow and bring into this world because I wasn't getting sleep. And it makes me emotional because to ever steer someone from seeking, especially new parents from getting any of the kind of help they could get, whether it be therapy, medication, at the village, anything, to guide someone in the direction of no, tough it out, because this is the youngest they'll ever be that day. And your baby will be seeking you, of course, but they don't know. And if someone who is you trust is able to care for them so you can take care of yourself for a night or two, I say, hell fucking yeah, do it. Excuse me if I'm not allowed to cuss.
No, cuss away. Fuck yeah.
Okay.
Fuck shit up. Use your resources. Use your tools.
Yes. And if it's not for you and you want to be that person, then guess what? I'm not judging you either.
That's right.
It's the judginess that they have coming from this place. They've been parents for what, like 2 years? I've only been a parent for 4 years, but I'm not going to tell someone this is exactly what you should do unless you say, is this exactly what I should do? And even then I won't. I'll say, this is what I did. And I'll tell you why I did it.
Right.
Ask someone else too, and then decide for yourself, because it's your journey. It's your baby. You're the parent. So it's been a few things that they haven't learned from.
Yeah.
And this is all going to have to be hearsay, but from people who I respect, who are some of the kindest people in the industry and the truly most, the least gossipy, have, and more than one person has said, the worst person I've met that you can call a public figure has been Nick Viall.
Yeah.
And I won't name those people, but I have heard that from multiple, that it's been awful. And I don't think we need to cancel people. Not everyone. Okay, not everyone. There's some people who are cancelable. Okay.
Yeah.
But they are in a different realm than this. Okay.
Right.
That's more so where I'm going.
I just think from my perspective, as someone who has dedicated my life to being an empathetic witness to people who have had some of the most harmful pain in sibling loss survivors. I'm glad you took a minute to speak about that, because a lot of them came into my comments as well. And they are largely, I would say, the forgotten, the ignored,
Agreed.
the disrespected, there's such a lack of willingness to empathize and understand for some ungodly reason, which I don't understand. So for me, I think people like you and I felt literally triggered, because I was like, they hurt people. They hurt Austen by this line of questioning. They hurt people who were listening, the lack of trigger warning. Even when someone comes in to therapy, right, for an assessment, you see all of this stuff that they've maybe written down or filled out forms. You don't just go in and say, well, left turn, tell me about the worst trauma of your life, right? There's nuance. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. So I think I understand that everyone who does podcasting does it differently. But what I want people to know is that being an influencer doesn't make you a therapist. Having a big platform doesn't make you a therapist. Having a platform and having all of that doesn't give you the right to take away someone's sense of emotional safety or to request that they unzip their soul and open their wounds for our entertainment. I don't like any of it. And I feel so strongly, 10 toes down, I will yell about. And here's the thing. Austen's not a fan of your girl, which is fine. Totally respect that. Doesn't like me. No problem. I don't care. The type of person that I am, it's not only about supporting him in what's right, but it's also about supporting, like I said, the people who were hurt, the sibling loss survivors who were triggered, who felt misheard, misunderstood, and all of that. So I hope that today we could provide a little bit of love and support and understanding for folks. Thank you for reaching out to us, because I know that matters to you. It certainly matters to me when people reach out and tell their story. I wish I could do more, but I'm like, thank you. I send you so much love, Yes.
And, to add to what you were saying, that just because you have a mic and maybe you're an influencer or public figure, that doesn't mean you're qualified for things like that. Additionally, if you're therapized, it also doesn't make you a therapist. And I think that is a trend we see a lot with people. And I think there's a confusion with, well, I can have empathy and know the right direction how to speak to people in a way that I have emotional maturity, but that doesn't mean that I know how to therapize other people and show them exactly how to do that. It's a really big thing I see amongst, well, I will say Nick and Natalie Viall. I don't know if they've gone to therapy. It's not my business. That's between them, God, and their therapist or whoever they like to talk to in their brain. I've noticed this with him a lot of thinking he's some sort of a counselor. I don't get it.
Fancies himself a therapist, and I'm like, honey, you are far from it. Far from it. Because here's the thing. I would have given Nick the benefit of the doubt. When she asked about that cliff, if he was as healed and whatever as he claims to be, do you know what I would have said? I would have said, what?
Let's pause.
Or maybe cut it out. Something like
there
that.
You go. It was edited enough to go to different camera angles.
Thank you.
Edited it.
Yes.
I did notice one little thing he did. He had his hand on the mic. And you saw as she was saying, what was this? And you could tell he knew where she was going. He went with his thumb. It was very subtle. You have to really go back and look. But he kind of went, it was like the way he did not move, you could tell he knew it wasn't good either. You could tell.
So then that begs the question, then, because when we have, partners, we have to check our partners sometimes. And especially if you're in a business together, if you're podcasting, right? I don't care who you're podcasting with. Like if Mandy and I are podcasting, one of us says something wild, it's like, girl, what are we doing here? So there's a lack of accountability. There's a lack of public apology. There's a lack of acknowledgement. And to me, that really speaks volumes. I just don't like people who, like you said, they fancy themselves a therapist, but they really have no idea. Let's be honest. Nick was given a platform. He was handed a platform. And
Correct.
What you do with that, I think, says a lot about your character, like when you mess up, when you make mistakes. So my hope is that maybe they own this and make some changes, but we're not seeing that as of yet.
It's been long enough. The longer you wait, I feel like the worse you make it for yourself by trudging it back up again. And it's one of those things, they may be waiting to record an apology. I would assume that it's that. If they do it behind their paywall, that will not be good.
No.
Because this was obviously recorded in advance, just like I saw Alex Baskin was on there. I think that was also recorded obviously in advance before anyone was talking about this. So I will give them that any, now they did have a subscribers only, because I've been dying to hear how they handle the apology, mostly because I think sometimes the important thing with public figures, how you apologize and handle when you screw up.
Yeah.
That can set an impetus for people all down the line. Because if we can see someone who is a public figure humbly just take accountability and go, you know what? Yeah, I did screw up. A great example would be Bronwyn Newport from Salt Lake City when she talked about lying about this stupid necklace. And she was like, yeah, it was stupid. I did it because I wanted to look cool. Just giving the full and it was dumb. That I can appreciate. Does she drive me nuts sometimes? Yes. But,
Sure.
I looked at her differently with that. It endeared me to her more.
Yeah.
I want to see how they handle it.
As humans, our ability to just own our missteps and to just take ownership and say, I apologize. This was not okay. But at the end of the day, I think we all know is that the human beings behind these podcasts, behind these platforms, egos are different. And it does take, you have to have a really good sense of your own ego and be humble to say, okay, I'm not perfect. I totally screwed up. This was my bad. And there are just some people who aren't capable of that. So here's going to be my question. Nick and Natalie, are you capable? Are you capable? I guess TBD, we're going to find out. And if not, I think that we all have some choices to make. But I'm going to leave that up to y'all. So Caitlin,
choices.
Oh my gosh, choices, girl. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so sad we didn't get to talk. We always have such a kiki. We were going to talk about Salt Lake, but we got into other things. But this has been a joyous hour. Thank you so much for joining me. Please plug, promote, tell people what you got going on, where they find you, all of it.
yes, you know what? You can find me at Besties by Caitlin, Caitlin, on TikTok and Instagram. My podcast is still on hiatus. We had a family event that with my son that really, stalled things. And I'm hoping that we will be able to be taking care of that. In fact, you know what? I will ask here. I'm still asking around if there are any medical malpractice attorneys that are licensed in Colorado. Please feel free to send me a DM because I am looking to very much light a few things on fire legally, of course.
Yes. And we're going to help her do it. We're going to light the match and we're going to help her do it. So seriously, if anyone listening to this, please reach out to Caitlin. We didn't get to talk about that stuff. Maybe,
it's a long story though. Yeah,
it is. And maybe if you're interested, you come back and we do another episode about what's going on. I think that I'm proud of you and all of the struggles that you're going through, how you're managing it. And I think that sharing your experience, strength, and hope would help people. So TBD, maybe we can do another up on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say as well, I adore you. I adore what you do for people who are watching these shows. That I'll tell you, I have friends who were so triggered, for example, by The Valley the last season. And when I recommended your content to them, they said, I finally now am able to watch the show from a perspective that is not emotionally painful. And I can still enjoy a show that I like because of the content you put out there and the breaking down of it and the way you could just pinpoint everything. And I think it's important what you're doing because, again, these are real people, not characters. And I just adore you myself. So I'm always happy to join you here.
Thank you, Caitlin. Oh my gosh, so sweet. So please check her out at Besties by Caitlin, crushing it. And of course, please check out Your Bish Therapist. I will say for me, please go ahead, give some 5-star reviews because it's 2026 and the trolls are literally back in full effect.
And comments why you love it. Comments why you love this show. Because that is the free way you can support Melissa here, okay?
That's exactly right. And I'm like, imagine me. I'm just over here trying to not die. And people are like, I hate this bitch. And I'm like,
well, you know what? That's the thing is and I want to say this, remember, monopoly money type of mentality here. These are the people who would crumble if you walked up to them, if you somehow found that person and you had that review and you held it in front of their face and you said, hi, I'm Melissa. It's nice to meet you in person. How are you doing today? They would crumble worse than the Wicked Witch of the West, okay? They would lose it. Those people don't get to really speak how they would like to in their real lives. And so they use the internet and other modes like reviews to be cruel because people are cruel to them and they don't get to let it out any other way. So they're tiny toddlers having tantrums.
And listen, I have attracted unhinged people my whole life. People project all of their stuff onto me. I'm pretty sure since the day I was born that I'm a literal blank slate. So trust me, I don't take it personal anymore. I don't read them. But I'm just saying, if you want to help your girl out, that's the way to do it. So
leave a 5-star review with a comment saying you love Melissa because trolls live under bridges where they belong. And again, I like to view them as toddlers. They are tiny toddlers having a tantrum. Are you hungry? Yes. Are you thirsty? Or are you tired? Which one?
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Wrong.
That's right. You got it, girl. Mm-hmm. So thank you all so much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. So for today, we're going to send love to you and yours. Ta-ta for now. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish Therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT Podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, or hear on YBT Podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.